we have the new Natasha Denona Xenon palette here to play with. When you first saw this palette, you might have been in either one of two boats. You might have been like, this is the most impractical thing I've ever seen, I would never use it. Or you're like, I have been waiting for a palette like this my whole life. I'm in the second boat where I feel like these tones are not very commonly seen in eyeshadow. I feel like Natasha Denona, the past two releases with the I Need a Nude and now this palette, she has been coming through for us cool tone lovers. Because she has so many warm palettes, I held out on buying any of her palettes until recently, and now I have two of them suddenly. I'm gonna be doing some very natural looks, show you how I take those to nighttime, and also some super glam looks to explore the versatility of this palette and really see how much we can get out of it, because it's a pricey palette. So is it gonna be a good bang for our buck? We're gonna go ahead and test that out. Here she is in all her glory, the Natasha Denona Xenon palette. First off, this is the packaging, which is this black plastic. It does get quite fingerprinty, as you can tell, but it has this just like gold sort of, it's like a silvery type of glitter that's within the plastic. And then you open it up, oh my gosh, so pretty. I feel like it's actually not coming across totally accurate on camera, but hopefully the swatches and natural light and everything will really do this palette justice. So I have a couple comparisons here first before we get into our looks. First, let's just compare to another recent Natasha Denona launch, which is the I Need a Nude palette. First off, this packaging of the I Need a Nude is a lot thicker. It's rubberized, so it feels a bit sturdier, but I do really love the look of this one. Here are the two palettes side by side. I feel like the Xenon palette really makes I Need a Nude look warm, even though it's really like a neutral cool palette with all of these gray tones. So yeah, very pretty, not similar at all if you wanted a comparison. And then I was thinking the only other palette that I feel like is even remotely similar to this one is from Lime Crime. This is their Venus palette, which has some cool tones. It also has a white in there and one silver shade. It's a small palette though, so I feel like it really does not totally compare. So kind of a similar vibe, but I definitely don't think they're dupes or anything. And then of course we have the ColourPop Stone Cold Fox palette, which has been sort of compared as a dupe to the I Need a Nude palette, which I don't agree with. So I also decided to pull it out to compare it to the Xenon palette. So in this Stone Cold Fox palette, you have like 3 gray shades in here that I feel like are not even really similar to the Xenon palette, because we have this sort of like darker gray, which we don't have in the Xenon palette. This silver, which I feel like is maybe similar to that silver foil shade that's in the middle, possibly. And then we have this white that has glitter in it. There is a sort of matte light color in here, but it's like a very unique take on white. You'll see as I put it on my eyes. So those are my little comparisons, even though I don't feel like any of those are very similar at all. Just wanted to show you them next to each other. So per usual with Natasha Denona palettes, you are getting a variety of formulas in here. You're getting some true mattes, you're getting some more fine metallics. There's also these chunky glittery shades. They're very interesting formula. They're sort of similar to a ColourPop Super Shock, where they have like a nice creamy base. So the more like chunky particles do actually stick to the eye quite well. And then we have these more like, I don't know what to call them, maybe like an ultra metallic, where they're like sort of pumped up from a smooth metallic. Definitely have some more glitter, but it's still very fine. And those ones sort of give you that very like wet look type of lid. Like I mentioned before, I do feel like some of these shades are just not pulling on camera, especially this shade, which has a really nice purple shift, but hopefully in those swatches that you just saw, you really get a better feel for the actual beauty of these shadows in person. Let's get started in the looks. I'm going to do what I did for my I Need a Nude review, which is I'm gonna do 3 looks, but I'm gonna take those looks from day to night, so it's actually more like 6 looks. And I am going to start with a very like natural everyday take on it. I feel like looking at this palette, most people would not be like, oh yeah, it's like an everyday palette. I'm gonna try to prove you a little bit wrong with that though. So let's go ahead and dive into these shadows. First, starting with this very, very pastel shade called Flurry, which almost is like a muted grayish. Like I feel like on camera, these are all blending together, but this one has like a little bit of yellow in it almost. It's a really hard shade to describe other than the fact that it's like the stone color. I'm taking that on a fluffy brush and I'm just going to start buffing that in my crease. And this is a really nice transition shade. I feel like especially for my skin tone. I don't have anything on my lids, by the way. I wanted to just test these on bare lids, no primer or concealer. It is showing up a bit more gray on my actual skin tone versus in the palette. I almost forgot, but let's go ahead and take off. Ooh, such a nice mirror. I feel like that's such a pro of these palettes, is like the mirrors are really beautiful. You know, sometimes mirrors are like not high quality. This is a good one. So now that that grayish is sort of worked in as a transition shade, I'm gonna go into this shade, which is called Blizzard, which is a pastel gray shade. And I'm just gonna do that right into the crease. Hopefully tell that it definitely is way more gray based versus that first shade we put down. Even though they look similar in the palette, they do pull differently on the eyes. This one almost has like a pastel, it's a very cool grayish blue, but I don't feel like it pulls too blue or like grayish. It's kind of like, it's still neutral in my opinion. Just gonna build that up a little bit more right into the crease. I think that these kinds of colors can be really hard to get right. Sometimes they're chalky or don't blend well, but so far with my time with this palette, I feel like these are really beautiful matte. Going in with a smaller little under eye brush, I'm gonna take both of those shades and just pop them lightly on the lower lash line. Kind of just gonna end up shading down there. So that's gonna be the super simple just base for our first more everyday look. That's really easy to do. Next, I'm gonna take this shimmer, which is called Rhyme, which is a really unique shade. These I think are some of my favorites in the Natasha palettes for everyday because they're one of those smooth metallics. I mean, just look at that shade. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pop that on my lid. This is a very, very light, pearly metallic, which I love. I'm always looking for these types of shades in palettes because they actually brighten my eye. The undertone of this shade is almost indescribable. I feel like it does something really cool to my eye color. Like, it's not a very white pearl, but it's also not like a warm pearl. It's so interesting. Like I said, I really am not sure how to describe it. One of those shades where it's like you put it on and you're like, whoa, I've never really worn a color like this. It just gives the eyes this really pretty glow without being too chunky. It's very smooth and glowy like I mentioned, so it's one of those shades that's really great for more everyday natural looks. So moving on, I'm going to take this shade called Contrail, which if you've seen any of my other eyeshadow videos, I always talk about how there's never a light enough highlight shade that's matte for me in almost every palette. But Natasha came through and she has this very, very light, again, it's not like a pure white, it has like a slight grayishness to it. And I'm gonna go ahead and pop this on the inner corners with a small, more rounded brush. Also on the brow bone. This is another one of those shades that I put on and I'm like, I have never worn a color that is like this flattering on me because it's not as stark as a white. It just has a little bit more softness to it. And I feel like it just goes beautifully with the tone of the rest of the eyeshadows for this very like almost frosty wintry look. So you could stop at this point and just do mascara and have a very natural eyeshadow look. I'm gonna do a little bit of lash line definition though. So for that, we actually don't have a matte like very dark color. We have these like deep shimmery blues, but they're a very slight shimmer. We have this sort of gray shade. I'm gonna go in with this middle one, which is called Bosch, which I would say is like, seems like the least glittery out of those darker blues, on a dense brush. And I'm just gonna start stamping this on my lash line. And then I'm gonna do a little bit of a smoky wing. Going back in with just a smaller brush, I'm gonna really soften that to make it look a little bit more natural. And that just added a little bit of that definition and smokiness. You can make the wing shorter depending on what you like. This is our first everyday look. We're gonna pop on some mascara. I just feel like these tones do something for my skin tone and my eyes that I've never experienced with an eyeshadow. I was just not expecting to be so surprised by how this palette looks on me. It's different from a lot of grays I've tried, again in a way that's really hard to explain. Just they have this perfect balance of not being chalky, having like that right amount of pigment while still being pastel and soft and blendable. We don't have any fallout going on so far, at least with those shades. I'm gonna go ahead and pop on some mascara. This is the Merit Beauty mascara, by the way. Here is the first daytime natural look using the Xenon palette. I love this. I wore this over the weekend and I felt like a little bit like a grungy ice princess. Like I felt so cool. I think these shades are so fun and something I really hadn't played with a ton until this palette, and like I literally love how they look on my skin. If you have fair skin, or like they do something to my eyes. Like I don't know why, I feel like they like make them a little bit more muted in like a really cool way. I really am impressed with the uniqueness and surprising versatility as well. So this is the first daytime natural look. If you want to take it a little bit more nighttime, we're going to dip back into the palette. I feel like there's a lot of ways you could do it. You could just darken the eyeliner, or you could do the outer corner, or you could just throw a darker shade all over the lid. I think I'm going to go ahead and just darken up the outer corner. So I'm going to grab a smaller fluffy blending brush, and we're going to start going into this gray shade, which is a matte color. This one is called Surratt. So I'm just taking that. Let me clean off this brush first. Taking that on that fluffy brush, I'm gonna put that on the outer V of my eye, and then I'm also just gonna like connect it to that wing that we already have drawn for more of a smoky sort of dramatic shape, and then drag it into the crease ever so slightly. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same over here. So I feel like that first light shade that has a little bit of like neutrally yellowness to it works so well as a transition. I feel like it's really important for these kinds of shades. Just have a slight skin tone transition shade for these grays to blend into. So instantly that's a little bit more dramatic. You could leave it like this, maybe add a liquid liner, but I want to utilize a lot of these shades. So I'm going to go in with this shade called Rouge, which is a smooth metallic. It's a grayish blue. Oh my gosh. Absolutely love the look of this. And I'm going to stamp this on the outer portion of my eye. That is so pretty. And then I'm just taking that blending brush just to feather it and blend it in. Next, I'm going to go back into this really pretty and unique pearl over here that we first used on the lid, which is called Rhyme. And I'm going to pop this on the brow bone and the inner corner just for a little more shimmer. And there's our more dramatic take on this everyday look. This could still be everyday, honestly, depending on how much makeup you like to wear. If you added like a black liner, that would definitely amp up the drama as well. This is so pretty. So far these grays, they do, as you can tell, they have this like pastel blueness to them. They're not really like a muddy, I don't know, like it's not a warmer gray. It's definitely a pure, like cool bluish type of rock gray. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this look, and then we'll start on our second, still more natural look, and then finally we'll move on to the full glam sort of fantasy of the Xenon palette. Back with a clean slate, we're gonna move on to our natural look number 2. I'm gonna start again with this same shade, which is called Flurry, which is that shade I don't know how to describe, let's just put it that way. Definitely has the least gray out of everything in this palette. And I'm just gonna use this the same way I used it before, as a light transition, just to set the base for the rest of the shadows. Next, I'm gonna dip into this pastel light gray again, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a different shape for this everyday look. The shade is called Blizzard, by the way. I'm going to put that on my inner corner and outer corner, and then connect them in sort of a halo eye shape, but they're very pastel, so still very natural looking. And then to deepen that up a little bit more, I'm going to take this next darkest gray shade. This one's called Snurt. It's my favorite one to say for sure. And I'm going to go over that first gray shade, create a little bit more dimension. I'm not going to blend this shade too much into the crease. I kind of just want to keep it on the inner and outer corner. Now that we have that laid down, I'm going to go in with this shade, which is called Snowbow, which I would say is the most unique shade in this palette in terms of, it's not a silvery gray. I mean, it is quite cool tone, but it actually has a slight purple pull to it. And I'm going to put this on the center of the lid. This is one of those more chunky, glittery shades, but still has a very smooth look to it. Like, it feels very creamy. So I think that did help pull it in a slightly more like lavender direction. It goes really well with the bluish gray that we have on the inner and outer corner. To tie everything together, I'm gonna go back into this shade, the one called Rhyme, which is that shimmery pearl, but it's more of a metallic, not super glittery, onto the brow bone. I love this shade so much, and I'm actually gonna blend it down, sort of connect it to the lid shade. And I'm also gonna pop this on the very inner corner. So here's the second very natural everyday look. This is similar to the first one in terms of like the tones that it pulls, but the purple on the lid takes it a slightly different direction and we just have a rounder shape going on. So I'm not going to do any liner. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple and fresh. I do want to show you an alternate to this look though, so let me go ahead and take off this lid color. So going into this shade, which actually has some like brownness to it, it's called Skift. So like that purpley metallic, this one is one of those unique shades in the palette where I feel like combined with the other colors, it can take it a different direction. So this one I'm gonna go same exact spot we put the purple one, and this definitely pulls like very cool neutral. You could just wear this all over the lid as a look, honestly. It's so pretty. And this is the second rendition. I think this neutral brown really gives a nice grounding feel to this palette where you can still make it very neutral, but combined it still goes really well with these cool blues because they're sort of complementary. And yeah, they're just so pretty. I really like the formula of that one as well. Take this look a little bit more nighttime. We're gonna go into this shade, which is one of the deep metallic blues. This one's called Night Sky. I feel like rightfully so. It has a little bit more shimmer into it. I'm gonna start building that on the lower lash line. Since we didn't have any shades here before for this look, I'm just gonna start to smoke that out and taking a fluffier brush just to help blend that. And then taking that same shade, I'm gonna deepen the halo eye even further, give it some more drama. I was gonna go ahead and deepen up the inner corners, but I'm really just liking the intensity of having that outer corner deepened up. I had a really interesting time blending out this shade Night Sky. It went really well on the lower lash line. I did get some fallout. Once I started to put it on my lid, I don't know if the brush I was using was a bit too fluffy. I tried using my fingers as well, and it has a really creamy feel to it, and it almost stuck to my eye like a little bit too much. Like it just wasn't blending out completely smoothly, so I went back in with the matte gray to sort of like help blend it out, and I feel like I finally got it to work. But yeah, something to know, I'll have to play around those shades a little bit more. You could do some lashes liner with this one, but this is our amped up look number 2. Now to go full drama with this palette, I removed the eyeshadow. I feel like it's still like it's stuck really well. Like it was pretty hard to get these shades off, so that's like a slight gray hint. There's so many gorgeous shades to use, it's really hard to pick. So I'm gonna first start off with this shade called Ebb, which is one of those darker blues. I'm gonna use a liner brush. I'm gonna do sort of a graphic eyeliner type of look. I did this when I reviewed the Lady Gaga House Labs palette, and I wanna sort of recreate the same shape. Starting in the inner corner, I'm gonna start carving out above my crease. And then once I get down, I'm gonna go from the lower lash line, start to wing that out, and then I'm gonna connect this line to the outer corner, and then I'm just gonna sketch over that until I'm happy with the depth of the eyeshadow. Okay, let's go ahead and do that over here. All right, those aren't completely even, but what can you do? It's actually a relatively easy shape to do. Really hard to pick, but I feel like for the just entire fill color of this look, I'm gonna have to use this shade Super Ionic, which is this ultra metallic glittery silver, the Beauty. There we go. The swatch shows it. It is so pretty. I'm gonna see if this just sticks on my lid. Okay, it is. Whoa. That is gorgeous. Wow. The shade is stunning, but the fallout level is definitely intense. I have glitter like all over my face, but that makes sense because it's a very, very glittery foiled shade. So I think an eyeshadow base, just doing your eyes before your makeup in general might be a really good pick for this one. So I am going to go ahead and finish up this lash line. We're gonna go ahead and use that Spa shade. I'm just gonna connect that to the shape we made. The shade's a little bit darker than what we used to sketch the shape originally. Then with the inner corner brush, I'm gonna take the shade here. Actually, let's try out the shade Neve. It has a little bit more glitter to it versus the Rhyme shade that we used a lot. So I'm gonna use my finger and pop that on the inner corner. Oh yeah, this one's got some chunkiness to it. And then going back in with that Rhyme shade, just because it has such a smooth metallicness to it, be really good for the brow bone. This is our first super glam look. Very graphic, fun, really just lets that super strong silver shine, that shade Super Ionic. It's definitely like one of those shades that your eyes just are drawn to in this palette. It is so pretty, really does not show up on camera. You saw it on my finger though, and on the lids. Like it just has this glow and shimmer. Definitely recommend doing an eyeshadow base and probably your eyes before your base makeup for this kind of amount of glitter because I do have fallout. But she's pretty, I like it. So I went ahead and just redid my concealer to get the glitter off, and then I have a nice bake layer on, so that should help with the fallout. I want to try this last look with a eyeshadow base. So I'm going to use the Jason Wu Prime Eye. This is just a white eye primer, and I'm going to go ahead and just pop this on both of my lids just to see if they perform a little bit better with a base on. Alrighty, now we're ready for some real fun with this palette. Really just go full grunge drama on them. I'm going to start off again with these two lightest pastel shades, like I did with almost every look, just to set a transition base. And then moving along to this next darkest gray, this one's called Snirk. And I'm going to continually deepen up the crease of this look. These mattes really do blend nicely into each other. So I went ahead and just really deepened that up and smoked it out a lot. Next, to deepen out the outer corner even more, I'm going to go in with this shade, which is called Ebb. Since we had a hard time, these are so creamy, hard time blending out Night Sky, let's see if this one works a little bit better. I'm going to use this with my fingers at first, and then we will go in with a brush. This one is definitely a bit more blue pulling than the other one, which is darker, a bit more muted. Okay, this one's blending pretty nicely. Yeah, I feel like that time it blended out pretty nicely. I think the applying with your finger at first and then going into blend really helps. Next, I feel like it would be a crime to do a video on this palette and not use this really beautiful gunmetal silver, which is called Cygnus. It's not as chunky as Supersonic, but it's definitely one of those more in-your-face metallic shades. So we're just gonna press this on all over the lid. Ooh, the shade is insanely gorgeous. So this did get like a little bit messy, but since we're putting this shade all over, it's gonna blend together. How could you be mad at that? It is so pretty. It's at least pulling a little bit more blue, maybe because we paired those blue shades with it, but it also has that, like, you can tell it's a bit more gray than those other blues. So now I feel like I need to use every shade in this palette. So we have yet to use Stellar. Actually, I think we did. Oh no, we did not. Stellar, which is more of a shimmery silver. This formula I really love in the I Need a Nude palette. I use the pink one almost every day. So this is like a lighter, pearlier version that we're gonna pop on the inner corner. Oh my gosh. Whoa. Going back in with the Contrail shade, which is that light matte white. Since we have a lot of shimmer going on, I'm going to keep the brow bone matte. I love the tone of this shade. It is just so interesting. Next, let's grab this Night Sky shade and see if this really pulls like a little bit darker. Oh wait, is this one we used? No, we used Ebb, which was more of like a navy blue. This one seems to have, okay, yeah. It is pulling a bit darker. All right, now I feel like a black liquid liner is just gonna go really well with the intensity of this look. I'm gonna take mine. This one is from Surratt Beauty, and we're gonna do a wing. I do feel like if this palette had a really beautiful, rich matte black, it would be a great addition because I kind of want to smoke out this liner, but we don't really have that. We just have like these different varieties of the navy blue. So let's go ahead and just use the darkest version of that, which is this middle shade, and that one is called Sposh. Now I feel like because we have so much drama going on the top lid, I don't want to do anything too dark on the inner corner. So I'm actually going to do this light shimmery liner from NYX in Rose Gold. I think a dark waterline would obviously be really beautiful with this look as well. I kind of want to try it now. Here's the shimmery version. Let's do dark as well. I actually have this Bare Minerals pencil, which is really similar vibe to this palette, where it's like this dark gunmetal blue. Let's go ahead and use this. Oh yeah, that definitely just amped up the look even more. I feel like we totally need lashes since this is so dramatic. Pop those on. All right, lashes are on. We're feeling just the full drama of this palette. I do want to do a little bit of a gloss to tie in to the eye. So I'm going to use this About Face Light Lock Lip Gloss. This one's the shade Unholy, which is just a blue shimmer. I feel like we'll do really well with the eye. And here's our last full drama look using the Xenon palette to all of its glory, I think. I really love the tone of the smokiness. It's like very blue It's kind of feeling like 2000s, like night out type of look, which I'm not mad at. It's really fun. So let's talk about like my overall thoughts on this palette and if you're gonna want to add this to your collection or not. Let's just start with the undertones, the shades, the colors. This, I think, you're probably, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, in either one of two boats. You looked at this and you were like, I love these tones, or you were like, I don't know how I'm gonna use this. If you love warm tones, obviously you're not gonna like this palette. If you feel like that you haven't quite found neutrals that are perfect for you yet, this honestly might be the answer. If you have olive skin, especially, silvers do really well. If you're fair olive like me, you may really enjoy this. I did find like a newfound love for these shades. Putting them on, they like did do something to my eyes and my skin that I hadn't quite experienced. And I feel like it was a similar experience when I tried the House Lab Silver Highlight, which I have on today. I was like, highlights always look makeup-y on me, but then I used that and I was like, it looks like I'm glowing. I feel like it's a similar thing with this palette where it doesn't seem like it's an everyday palette, but for me, when I put them on, I was like, these are really pretty and I could totally see myself using them every day. But you really need to ask yourself, are these your kind of vibe or not? I am in the boat that these are literally surprisingly very versatile. I did feel like I got so much out of this palette, from the everyday neutrals to the super glam look. There's so many fun shades to play with. And I think a good makeup palette inspires you to have fun with makeup, but is also very usable, like you're gonna use it a lot. And for me, honestly, like I really did break in this palette and I feel like I will be reaching for this a ton, both for everyday, but also for more dramatic looks like this. It's super fun. I do really like the packaging. It's such a cool vibe, honestly, from Natasha. She has been releasing these new palettes for us cool tone lovers. I have never seen a cool tone palette that's even remotely similar to this one. What would be really interesting is, because you can pop these shadows out, of making my own everyday palette that'd be a combination of this and the I Need a Nude, like just picking my favorite shades and then making like a more dramatic palette. That would be really interesting to do. Let me know if you want a video on that. For me, absolutely love this, especially during the Sephora sale. I think it'd be worth a buy if you feel like these tones are even slightly interesting to you. They might surprise you, honestly, in the versatility. I think it was gorgeous. There were some more chunky glitter shades that you're gonna want to use an eyeshadow base with and make sure that you can clean up the fallout. The mattes were creamy and blendable. Classic Natasha Denona quality. They're gorgeous. There's so many shades that I love in here, and I think the shimmers, so unique. Honestly, if you know a palette that is similar to this, let me know so I can check it out, but like it really is something I've never seen before in eyeshadow. I think the quality is beautiful. It would make a wonderful gift. So this would be a thumbs up for me. Add it to your Sephora basket, like I mentioned, if it slightly interests you. Try it out, you might be surprised. Or if you just love cool tones, you're gonna fall in love with this palette. I think it's gorgeous. Okay, enough said. I really love the palette. Thank you for tuning in. There will be 2 more videos here if you want to continue the fun and the good vibes. Click one of those and I will see you all there. Bye.